First of all, I would like to thank Casey and Henry and this university for inviting me to this symposium. And secondly, my apologies for this blasphemous, uh, blasphemous title, but I should tell you that my original title was even worse. So please say of crabs or shits or something like that. But my daughter told me that you are going to make this a laughing stock. So anyway, so today I'm going to focus on actually two critical moments of two eco films defined in their broadest sense, The Mermaid and Wolf Totem. So here I have a disclaimer to make because I've been working on this project for a little bit of time, and I was working on this on the way back to Hong Kong yesterday. And so right now I have some fragmentary ideas, but if I do not have a good conclusion, it's not because of my fault. It's because that my colleagues here, my friend Fiona and Howard, have made a high bar for me because they wrote fabulous essays on the mermaid and the wolf totem. Anyway, so I'm going to start with the first critical moment in the mermaid, which Alvin introduced earlier this morning. So I have a different approach to this film. So I would like to start with this moment when this guy, Liu Xuan, a real estate tycoon, is driven to vomit and excrete waste when he chooses to experience in person the impact of the sound wave that a sonar transmitter emits. So he has installed these transmitters in Timor Bay area, which resembles Shallow Bay in Hong Kong, in order to drive the marine creatures away from their habitats so that he can proceed to reclaim land from the sea for his real estate development. So, but after this experience with the sonar transmitter, Liu keeps saying that, as you can see that I crap in my pants and some other things like that to his business partners that he can no longer hold his bladder and bowel and cannot help but release the excrement. So his words make people snicker and feel really awkward. But I believe that it is precisely because of these cannibalistic words and wordplay and the filthy excrement that Liu Xuan is able to feel the pain that marine creatures have to endure when they are faced with the impact of the sound wave. So to be more specific, he has to re-experience the blood. Re-experience the blood that some marine creatures have shed under the impact of the sonar transmitter, which is graphically demonstrated to a group of investors earlier in the film, as you can see in this picture. So this moment is filled with Feces. This moment filled with Feces may sound weird or abnormal or against normal orthodox morality, but it demonstrates authentic inner and immediate feeling for this guy. And it is not accepted by orthodox discourse, and therefore I would argue that this affective moment has some pre-linguistic, pre-symbolic characteristics and offers an opportunity for a turn in character development and the narrative of the film. In other words, Liu Xuan's choice to experience the power of the sonar system, which leads to his understanding of the pain that target marine creatures suffer, marks a turning point in his attitude towards the species other. His vomit and Feces exemplify a pre-symbolic affective bond between humans and non-human creatures. And very interestingly, I find another similar moment in another film by Jack Arnold's Wolf Totem in 2015. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about the plot of this film, but I'll mention that this moment is very interesting parallel of the first critical moment when Chen Zhen, a Han Chinese educated youth, self-exiled in the inner Mongolian grassland, is bitten to bleed by the wolf cub he raises. In this episode, Chen Zhen routinely walks the cub in order for the cub to maintain its wild nature. Right? This is a quite ironic moment. The cub seems to have smelled something that reminds it of its own species. It becomes so excited that it strives to break away from Chen Zhen's chain. Chen Zhen forbids the cub from getting close to its pet in the wild. So in a physical clash, the cub bites Chen in the arm and makes him to bleed. The bleeding irritates Chen Zhen, but also brings to his momentary awareness that he, as a human, can also fall into the prey of the wolf, and that the wolf has its own nature. He begins to realize that the cub is not his belonging. So in both of these critical moments, in both of these films, both of these critical moments feature blood and feces, but there are some differences. So in Wolf Totem, Chen Zhen regards the cub as his kid. Earlier in the film, Chen Zhen claims that he brings the cub up with much care and love. In Chinese, he specifically says literally, 我一把屎一把尿把你拉扯大 means bringing up and cleaning your pee and poop. So here, feces are specifically endowed with emotional significance in Chinese culture, symbolizing intimacy and closeness. In this case, pee and poop represent intimate relationship between parents and kids, wholehearted sacrifices that parents usually make for the well-being of children. The blood in this episode actually simply shocks Chen Zhen. He's immediately irritated and intuitively curses the cub as an evil wolf. So this bleeding brings Chen's culturation of wolf back into physicality and corporeality, which offers an opportunity for an affective connection. While in the mermaid, both vomit, excrement, and blood display downright physicality and materiality. They seem to remind people that both humans and marine creatures, when being oppressed and attacked, will bleed and become incontinent. The film seems to imply that there are no positive or essential differences between bleeding and incontinence, both signaling corporeal pain and suffering. So they only differ in degrees, in my understanding. So, both excrement and blood confront people with immediate pain and presence of pain and suffering. And in a way, neither of them is symbolized. So here, I do not have to mention the differences between emotion and affect, which Alvin introduced earlier this morning about Basuni and Lily Wang's theorization of these terms. So I want to emphasize here is that although there are these affective moments or enlightened moments, but these moments are really ephemeral. So they're quite immediately incorporated into the larger discourse of their respective films. So in other words, those films construct their respective narratives featuring ideological and moral preaching, taking advantage of environmental protection. So I'd like to take these two affective moments as a point of departure and investigate the ways in which the greenwashing ideologies are constructed in these two films. And my tentative argument is that instead of deepening trans-species connection and effective empathy, those films in fact reveal more serious ideological problems through various forms of discursive differentiations. So first, I'll mention that in Mermaid, the most intriguing and most dreadful thing in this film, I think, is that sonar transmitter. It is dreadful not simply because of its physical power, but more importantly, the way in which it functions. As you can see here, the girl explained to the investors that they can adjust the frequencies to target different species. So it targets specific species with an adjusted electronic frequency, and it may easily bring the specter of genetic weaponry alive, which may function exactly the same way targeting a specific group of people. And this sonar system, a symbolic of technological advancement, embodies environmental racial differentiation and discrimination. So from a technological perspective, this eco-racism is exemplified in a monopoly of scientific knowledge of different species and takes this monopolized knowledge as a weapon to execute a differentiated and specific target. Specific target. So this act also reminds us of the biological cartels such as Monsanto, who monopolize biological knowledge and ruin local agriculture. So this is indeed a notorious eco-racism with manipulation and control on biopower. And from a symbolic perspective, this eco-racism is also built upon epistemological or discursive differentiations. And these differentiations can be viewed from following four aspects. The first, in terms of species, besides the differentiation that the transmitter executes, we also notice a stark discrimination and violence on the part of humans against the Mer people in this film. So humans, at least the group led by that white guy George, define Mer people as extremely violent species and ask their fellows to attack the Mer people as violently as possible so that the Mer people have no chance to react. It is through this discursive displacement that humans justify their violence against different species. And secondly, in terms of different races of human beings, we see a stereotyping of characters. In the film features a serious racist depiction of characters. Interestingly, when species discrimination is presented in the same episode, we see that this guy called George, a white male, technologically savvy, is a maniac, crazy about finding new species. He is manly and violent. And then also see that Japanese girl, she is depicted as it's kind of a cute and cruel person, really a stereotype in imagination of stereotypical imagination of this Japanese character. And thirdly, in terms of gender, we see also many scholars have discussed the gender figure of mermaid, and also Fiona also talks about fanficality, kind of depiction of mermaid, comparing it to this film Last Ocean, which is very inspirational. And I want to add another dimension of exoticism. So the film parallels females with exotic animals from the very beginning. And in the morning, Alvin shows the very beginning of that the museum of exotic marine animals. And you see caricatured animals, and also later on we see that similarly, females are caricatured too. So in the film, the so-called the white, the rich and beautiful Baifumei, which are already a very gendered fantasy of female characters, are no longer valued. But for the bored male being led, this kind of female cats are attacked with surprise, no matter how huge the animal is. But exotic animals and exotic females alike for him are priceless. And finally, in terms of class, I think that it is very interesting to see in this film that taste becomes the criteria of class differences. Just give you one example, that in this film, Guolan, looks down upon Liu Xun because in her words, Liu Xun is simply that kind of person who is genetically low because he grows up from a very poor family, and no matter how rich he gets, he does not belong to that kind of aristocratic class of billionaire. So in all, I believe that thanks to all these kinds of discursive differentiations, the affective empathy built upon the pre-symbolic and pre-linguistic connections is quite is incorporated into the highly charged world governed by the techno-capitalism in the film. And finally, in Wolf Totem, this is I should admit that a shaky part of my my thinking, but I believe that this film is quite different from the original novel, in which we see a lot of discursive differentiations on the levels of class, ethnicity, and urban and the rural differences. But this film, in a way, adapted from the original novel, is quite different because I think its main ideology is a kind of a coming of age story. So I'm pretty sure that this French director does not want to mess up this a lot. All these kinds of political sensitive issues displayed in the original novel. So in a way, he repackaged the story into this very Hollywood-like kind of coming of age story in which we see Chen Zhen actually taking care of this transpecies, this cup in a transpecies relationship, and then the film dismisses all those politically sensitive differentiations. But for me, it is very interesting to see the film ends with a very interesting ideological repackage in which that I got this idea from our discussions early this morning that this singular wolf is finally liberated from this too caring father. But I believe that this singular wolf does not function or does not play the role or fulfill its responsibility to carry on the ecological well-being of the whole grassland. So while the Mongolian wolf packs are eliminated by the military, this single wolf who is liberated cannot, in a way, save the whole species or save the grassland. But anyway, in this very Hollywood style story, this singular heroism, plays the role for us to appreciate the sentimentalism of the film. Finally, constructs for the entertainment. So that's pretty much I want to share. So there are a lot of fragmentary ideas. So I would like to hear your criticism and your feedback for me to put this together.